All right, here we are. Finally, Monday morning, 11:02, as opposed to 11.
Yes.
It's a casual 11.
It's a casual 11.
Casual 11. We'll roll in somewhere around 11:30.
Well, I thought we were live and then found out that we weren't. So
good thing we found out.
We're starting right in just a second.
We can start now.
We can start now.
Let's start now.
Okay, let's start now.
All right,
Hi, André.
We're started. Hey, Tara.
Happy Monday. Take two.
Yeah, happy Monday. All right.
Hello,
69.
everyone who's watching us live or in the replay. It's Mondays with Tara and André.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah.
It still is.
It still is.
After all this time.
After all this time.
All this time.
So if you're watching us, please say hello in the chat and let us know that you can hear us and see us. Hopefully everything's okay. Make sure you speak in the microphone.
Hello.
So, there's people watching. Awesome.
Yeah, I think our producers are saying that we're shaking the table too much.
Okay. So here we are, Mondays with Tara and André. We come here live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern.
11-ish.
So, 11-ish today.
Sometimes a little late.
So I'm Tara Lynn Franco. I'm a relationship and awesomeness coach.
And you just came straight from the shower. And
I did sort of come straight from the shower.
And I'm André Turgot. I am a sex-positive psychotherapist.
So we are co-founders of the online community Let's Talk Polyamory, which you may be watching from, or you may be watching us also from YouTube or our business page. But if you're not a member of our group, please join in. So on this group and in all the work we do, we share what we've learned about navigating non-monogamy. You're fixing the camera. Okay. Can you scroll the notes, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. What we've learned about being in a polyamorous relationship. And so today is actually a special occasion-ish because we just passed what we would sort of consider our 6-year mark of when we first started dating.
We would consider. It's funny because I am so opposed to it, so defiant of it, right? Because my history was one where my relationships, my past relationships, would generally not last longer than a year or two, and I would feel like I was being escorted onto the relationship escalator, and I was wanting to avoid that. So before you, the longest relationship I ever had outside of my mother with another entity was with my cat Coco, who I had for 20 years, and that was only because I had made a pledge that I would be their parent, their mommy, their daddy for the rest of their life. But being in a long-term relationship came and gave me the heebie-jeebies. It wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to do, and I wasn't necessarily conscious to the idea that I might want to avoid doing it. But somehow you finagled, you weaseled your way into this thing, and I think you were able to recognize my attachment style and give me enough room to be that way, but then also start to invite me into it and help me to look at my own attachment styles and how I could go from feeling anxious avoidant into a more secure relationship. So I blame you.
You blame me. Hence the name, why he calls me, with love, I think, Weasel.
I call you a few things, but yes.
Call me a few things, yeah. So it's been 6 years, I think. So what was your longest relationship other than your cat, like with a human?
Yeah. Probably my second wife and I, but a lot of that was because I was living in...
And how long?
Probably about 4 years altogether. But part of that was because we would live in different places for the most part. And of those 4 years, 2 of them we had already, I think, started to dissolve the marriage. But it took a while to actually file the paperwork. But we weren't really together for the entirety of that.
Okay. My longest was just made it slightly over the 7-year itch mark, but then... disintegrated from there.
Well, that's interesting, the 7-year itch mark. So I need to hear more about that and how people are able to tolerate that or go beyond that. But it seems to me there is a lot of documentation about couples that stay together, monogamous couples in formally recognized relationships. But what is the literature talking about the longevity of people who are in non-monogamous relationships? So it'd be interesting to get more data on that.
Yeah, so if you have been in a non-monogamous relationship for, I don't know, 5, 10 years, whatever, however much time, let us know, even if it's just been 1 year, what you feel is your successes have been and what's the key for you. And we're going to share 6 lessons, 6 years polyamorous, 6 lessons later. I mean, there's more than 6 lessons. But let us know in the chat what you feel your secret to your success is and make sure that you can hear us and all that stuff. So before we jump in though, we want to let you know that registration for our Poly Newbies course is still open. So you can still sign up at any time. And if you sign up sooner rather than later, you can catch up and join us for the live trainings, which happen every 2 weeks. Today is one of those days, hence the wet hair. We've been busily getting ready because we have an exciting topic, which is what style of consensual non-monogamy is for me, which I think is a great topic and something people kind of grapple with throughout their relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because we might say, oh, I'm polyamorous or I'm in an open relationship, but what style of polyamory, what style of open relating do we do? And we'll talk about that in our course.
Yeah. So there's the link. I guess I could hide this. I was just going to show really quickly. So if you want to join us, the link is up there, and it's also all over the group and on our website. But it's courses.letstalkpolyamory.com/polynewbies course, and it includes all those things. It's
awesome.
So on the page, there's lots of information. So it's for you if you're curious about what it might like to be non-monogamous. So maybe you're just exploring it, and maybe that's why you're watching us today. You want to open existing relationship and want to know how to do it and feel prepared, or if you've run into some sticky situations and are, want to take a step back and take the steps forward to kind of look for tools and work through these things. So,
or you want to sidestep stepping into sticky relationships, sticky situations in a relationship, right? Because you don't have to go through every level of pain and all that. We've gone through a lot of pain for you. So, through other people's experience, we can become aware of some of the pitfalls and how to sidestep them.
Exactly. So I'll leave that up on the bottom. Okay, so now on to today's topic. So we'll get a little bit nostalgic maybe and share 6 or more of the things we've learned over the past 6 years. I would consider this a long-term relationship.
For me, it's longer than the other ones have been, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it's getting close for me. Probably the death knell was long before we hit the 7 mark, Well, I think I would have described my relationship as being content, but not like thrilling and exciting and that sort of thing.
Relationship.
My previous relationship. Yeah. Not yours. Okay.
Ours.
So we'd love ours.
But let me ask you though, do you have consideration for the 7-year itch? Is that something that, is a kind of like a little beacon or something that kind of is on the horizon that kind of scares you a little bit? Or do you think, well, no, we'll just continue as we are, and that anniversary, that marker, that phenomena doesn't really apply to me? Like, how do you feel about all that?
I feel different than I think I would have in the past, because I know that because of these lessons that we're going to talk about, that we keep doing things a little differently and we keep it fresh, so to speak. And so I've always, I think, in relationships, not really forward thought, is it going to end in a year? Is it going to, is it going to this? Is it going to that? I just don't really think about it. And maybe that speaks to some of my secure attachment. And maybe it speaks to my naivete. I don't know. But, and maybe I wasn't working enough on that relationship too, to do my part in keeping it awesome. So
interesting.
Yeah.
But, it makes me think of being in a long-term relationship like that and all the wonderful benefits that we could get. But then I think about, well, the other side of that are, the feelings that I might not be getting, and sort of like NRE, right? So being in that new relationship and having that new relationship energy is a wonderful phenomena. And how do we get that back in our relationship? Are there things that we can do to kind of recreate that, short of breaking up for a year or two and then getting back together? Which I've suggested on occasion. Yeah. And I wonder, if we were to simply take a break from each other for a year, would we get together and still know each other? Would it be enough to recreate that NRE feeling? But one of the, I guess, benefits, one of the things that people cite as the wonders of being in a polyamorous relationship is that we can go out and have those NRE experiences while still maintaining the relationship that we have.
Exactly.
If we're wanting, if that's a style of relationship.
Yeah. And one of the one of our human needs is around variety. And so I think for me, polyamory allows me to have some variety, and there's other things that we do, I think, that are different than I would have done in previous relationships that have helped. So
Without putting you on the spot, anything come to mind?
Well, we're going to talk about the 6 things.
There we go.
That's exactly what we're talking about today.
Okay, I thought you had a specific way. Yeah, let's jump into it. What are some of those 6 things?
So I would love to know in the comments, if you're watching in the replay or watching us live, how long you've been in a consensually non-monogamous relationship and what you feel is the secret to your success.
And do you have concerns about its longevity, right? Does it change? Like if you become aware of the age of it, does that psychically influence you at all?
Yeah. And I think, people who've been together, whether monogamous or non-monogamous, they may give a different answer of why it's successful. And I think the thing is finding the sweet spot for you. So I already mentioned this one, but I think one of the lessons I've learned and one of the things I think that keeps us good is keeping it fresh.
Keeping it fresh.
Fresh and not just like, it is keeping it fresh and, having fun. I like to think we always talk about going on adventures. And I think what I love about you is this idea that we have everyday adventures. Like this weekend, for example, we decided just to go out and go to a queer karaoke event just because you found it and it seemed interesting and we'd never done it before. So we went out to the event and it was fun. And then we went out and discovered a new vegan place to eat, which we loved. So I love that. Like this idea of not having a necessarily agenda.
But wouldn't that be, doesn't that hold true to people who are in monogamous relationships?
Sure. Some of these things are the same for like monogamous relationships. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is the same. But it's interesting in those 2 venues, going to the queer karaoke and then after to that little diner, there was still the possibility in both those scenarios of flirting with other people outside of each other.
That's true. That kind of makes it, that makes it fun too. And you might not do that if you're in a monogamous relationship.
Although we do know of a couple that do that, right? They are in a closed relationship, married, long-term marriage, but there is some, I guess, tolerance would be the word, of their partner flirting with other people. So the one, I think they identify as a wife, recognize that their husband does have this desire, need to be interacting with other people, flirting in that way. And the wife is maybe not preferring it, but does allow and tolerate its demonstration as long as it remains flirting and verbal as opposed to acting on it.
Do we know if it doesn't? I think I know. At first I was like, who are you talking about? But now I know. Do you think it's ever gone beyond that?
I think it has on occasion. And I think it actually created a bit of a rift and they were able to walk back from that. But I don't think that they necessarily had the knowledge or the transparency necessary to do it openly that way. But I think that they were able to somehow recover from it. But I know it was shared with me in confidence that it did kind of create a point in the relationship where they did question whether or not they should continue in their marriage. So they were able to, fortunately, walk back from that. But how much hurt and heartache, misunderstanding, and all that could have been avoided had they been able to speak about it more openly and honestly.
Well, that's number 2. But before we get into that, there's a couple of things I also wanted to say about keeping it fresh. Because I think the one thing that happens sometimes when people open up a relationship or become polyamorous, they get so enamored by new people in the NRE that they kind of forget and neglect their existing relationship or relationships. And so I think they forget what it's like to date their partner. And so I think that's an important part of what we do is like we keep dating each other. Like we keep finding new things to do, plan things, build anticipation. And, it's trickier when you're living in the same house if that's your situation. But I think keeping that in mind is a way of keeping it fresh and keeping the excitement going. I mean,
it makes me think of going to the gym, right? Asking each other out on dates. It might take some effort. It might even feel kind of corny to do it. It's like, like my going to the gym. It's like, I don't really want to do it. But every time I do allow myself to do it, I'm always glad that I did it. So asking you for a date kind of, it's like, I know you're going to say yes. I know you're wanting to go out with me, but it's the gesture. It's my taking the time to make that intention and make that invitation. And every time we do go on a date, I'm always glad that we have done that. So I invite myself, I invite others, I invite you to participate in that as well.
And one of the things we love doing is watching old movies. And so this weekend, instead of just sitting on the couch and doing it like we normally do and watch the movies, we brought a mattress down and we created a little camp out in front of it. So it made it a little special and interesting, our living room camp out.
So how to take everyday mundane events, or possibly mundane events, and to add some kind of zest or sparkle to them.
Yeah,
Because
sparkle.
when we do the new relationship, right, what is it about that is so fantastic? And it's because there is the mystery to it. There's the unknown. There's that part that is not automated yet.
Yes.
So we can, identify those things. And how can we reinvent? How can we invite for having those new types of experiences? We'd never camped out on the floor like that before. So it was a newbie.
Yeah. Okay, so you alluded to this one, which is we put this at number 2, but I think this is probably one of the number 1 things, is talking about it. So even when you're afraid, or when it's hard, or when you're worried that it might hurt your partner, is just being open and honest with communication.
It makes me think back to our experience, right? So when we first started out, I don't think there was any presumption as to what the relationship was going to look like. We were very, very new to it. We hadn't yet started on that relationship escalator, if that's where we were going to go, but we hadn't also announced ourselves to be polyamorous. It just was unsaid. And then we were kind of going at it in that rather heavy scene. And I kind of jokingly, suggested that it might be easier if we had another set of hands. And you said, well, actually, that'd be amazing. That'd be like great. And I was like, wow, like that's pretty cool. But it was, I guess, using a little bit of humor, but we were trying to announce our position to find out, how would the other person feel about it? How would you feel if I felt that way? But it all came back to the idea that we talked about it openly, and then it allowed for this epic odyssey.
Yeah. And I think, communication, it's like, well, I don't want to say this thing because I'm worried that I'm going to hurt my partner. But I think the thing to keep in mind is, like, by not saying things, you have the potential of hurting them even more, especially if they sense that something's off or not right or whatever,
hurting the other person, no doubt. So there is that consideration, but you also may be doing a disservice to yourself by not speaking your own true position, not being your authentic self. I think it's better to announce what your preference is when you know it, and then take it from there. It may not receive the reception you're hoping for, but at least you will know that you're being ethical about it. You'll invite consent, and if it's not the right thing for you, you will find the right thing that is for you.
Exactly.
I think it's important.
Okay. So number 3, having time on your own and having your own interests. Yeah. So that's part of what I think has been helpful for us. I think what happens sometimes when people get together when they're older, is that you get used to spending time alone. Like, I got used to spending time on my own. And I actually love spending time on my own sometimes, doing my own thing. And I think it's part of feeling more secure in your relationship, is being able to be alone, have your own interests, and, do those things when maybe your partner might be occupied, or where you might otherwise feel insecure or jealous.
I think, as in relating to the jealousy part, I think having your own thing is a wonderful thing, because while the other person's on a date, you are occupied, perhaps doing your own thing, but also that if that relationship or other relationships might go south, that you still have your own autonomous ventures that you like to go into, and you do it. So you're not losing the entirety of yourself in that relationship.
Yeah. The other part is, for us, that's worked really well, is that we're occasional nesters.
Well, that's a luxury. I mean, I think that's a point of privilege, right? We are able and wanting to live on our own, and able and wanting to live together on occasion. Yeah. So it's wonderful if you have that. Yeah.
But I think it's what are you laughing at?
Oh, just thinking about, the people who don't have access to that.
Right.
It makes me appreciative for what I do have. But even if I don't have that option, I can still have wonderful gratitude for the situation that I do, also recognizing the merits of it.
But creating space too, like for your partner,
right?
Like, even if we're here where we are now, which is your space, if you do need time alone, or if you want to have something, I have friends in town and I can stay with them, and I have done that, right? Similar for you, right? Is like, we also can create space even if we are nesting. So being a bit creative about that,
right?
So
yeah, there's always options available.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay. Number 4, feelings aren't facts.
What does that mean?
What does it mean?
Well,
this is your lesson that you put down.
Well, I think
I agree, but
you were wonderful at helping me to really absorb that, because I knew intellectually, but I wasn't really absorbing it emotionally. And feelings aren't facts. So I can, here's an example. You go out on a date with Mr. or Ms. X, And I start to think, well, oh, that's an indication of mine not being enough, or you're getting something else, or whatever it is. And I can just create my own narrative unchecked with all the supporting evidence, but it's all one-sided, and it's not necessarily factual. It's simply my own feelings coming from wherever. And I think, and I applaud you for that, you really helped to invite me to really see that, yes, those feelings may be true, they may be painful, they may be present, but there may be something beyond that, on the other side of that, and it helps to counter it. So really now asking myself, what else could be true?
What else could be true?
What else could be true?
One of my favorite questions. Well, I think it's so easy to like feel a certain way and then collect all the evidence that supports that particular feeling, you know, and you can make meaning out of everything. We are meaning makers as humans. And I think, we have that possibility of thinking differently. Like, that's why I like that question. What else can be true is, you know, what is making me, what's driving this feeling? And I mean, it could be an indication that something's true. It could be, but that's where the talking comes in, right? So just being aware that, you know, you may feel that way, but it may not be the true case.
Yeah, it's interesting because as we were starting to talk about that, if I am stacking the narrative one way, what is the benefit? Like, what's driving me to feel that way? Am I wanting to feel as though I'm the victim? Am I wanting to find cause for justification in something else I might be doing? You know, so it's always good to look introspectively and see what it is, but also being aware that I might not be able to present myself as such an unbiased approach. I may be very determined one way and not really being as objective as I might, you know, be to help myself to really balance it out and say, well, is it justified? Is it well-founded to have this feeling, or am I simply feeling this way out of fear or out of whatever else might be driving it? So it's good to ask ourselves these questions, and then, as you say, to be able to speak about it openly and honestly with our partner or partners. Yeah,
and sometimes it doesn't matter what your partner says; you can't be talked out of it, right? And this is, and you know, so that's where I think what you were saying around really understanding where this might be coming from is important, and why you're holding on to the feeling. That's a question I constantly ask clients. Is they'll say, like, I don't want to feel this way. And, you know, I'll say, well, you know, what's the benefit of holding on to this feeling? Like you said, like, how is it serving you? And they're like, it's not serving me. And then once you start like going a bit down that path, you sort of eke away, like you said, it's like, oh, maybe I want to feel this way because I want to something else. There's a missing need. So, you know, and that's where then you can start to unpack what it is you need to do to address that feeling. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I don't have a good segue for number 5. It is just that everybody does relationships different, and that's okay too.
Yeah, that's true. We can still hang out too.
Right. So should we talk a bit about that, about relationships being different, about not yucking up somebody else's yum? Or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, you know, and that consensual non-monogamy is not the only way, and it might not be right for everybody, and that's also okay.
Right.
You had an interesting experience on a date recently where you told someone that you were consensually non-monogamous. I mean, what was interesting about that was it was in your profile, but they didn't see it.
Well, no, because
ignored it, or
so we went out on this date, and as you say, on my profile it says E&M, and by the tone of what they were saying, I was alerted to the idea that maybe they didn't read my profile, maybe they didn't understand what E&M was. So I asked them if they knew what it was, and they said, well, the E is probably something to do with emotions or something like that. So I explained to them what it meant, and their reply is, well, what is it about your partner that they're not enough?
Ooh.
Yeah. And I found myself becoming very defended, as though, like,
defensive.
Yeah, but I guess defended in my own
position. Oh, in your position. Yeah.
But really, then I started thinking about it, and it's like, why does that have to be the default setting, that I should automatically want to couple with one person? There's nothing wrong with that. It's maybe the most fantastic thing in the world. But if I'm not wanting that style of relating, is there something perverse or automatically pathological about the way that I might want to be? So for me, I feel as though I want to have many experiences of the universe. So I could flip their question, why isn't your partner enough for you? Well, what makes you want to limit your experience of the universe? Why should you want to restrict your interactions?
Right. And we have like, I mean, I know people will throw this back in your face, but like we have multiple friends for a reason. We have different friends that we have different interests with. No one person can be your everything.
Right.
And I think it's a lot of pressure also for me, like to make that one person your everything, you know, and, you know, sure, one person can be enough, but that's not the point of it. I think that opportunity is there. Like, you know, limit. I like the idea of like, why limit yourself?
Yeah.
To
well, they might
experiences, emotional experiences, because we're emotional people.
Or physical, sexual experiences too, right? Yeah. It's like, why should, no, it's rather more like they were suggesting that there was some kind of deficit or something that wasn't enough, as though if you were to do this, it's an indication that you're not being satisfied. And that's just not the case. That's not how it works in polyamory.
Yeah. I'm curious if anyone else has had that experience when they've explained that they're consensually non-monogamous. The other thing about this one is like everybody does it differently, and that's okay. And you can still hang out. Is if you identify, say, as polyamorous, that doesn't mean you can't date someone who's more of a swinger. You know what I mean? Or that people, well, I guess this goes into the number 6 is labels are helpful, but they aren't everything. Because someone may say, oh, I'm polyamorous or I'm a swinger, and very firmly identify with that, but their definition of that might be different than yours.
Yeah. You're thinking about somebody in particular?
Well, we have friends that are very, you know, like I would say that our relationship with them is on the high emotional and the high sexual as well. And so if I were to describe them myself, I would identify them, even though they don't date separately, that I would identify them as polyamorous because they create multiple loving relationships. And that's an important aspect for them, but they do not want to be called
they object to being
polyamorous.
Called polyamorous, right?
Because I think for them, polyamorous means that you must have outside partners.
Do you think that is the distinction for them, or are they not polyamorous but also don't date separately? I was wondering if it was the level of emotional connection that they objected to, that they're not wanting to announce themselves in that way. But the point of that's specific to their relationship. But the point is, we might be engaged with these people, and just for the sake of conversation or for identifiers or to try and relate, we might say, well, it feels like we're polyamorous with these people. And they might say, well, it feels like they are very close friends that we have, you know, emotional connection to and sexual connection to, but we're not really polyamorous. And does it really matter what label we put on there? But the idea is that it could help to inform us, but also it can create dialogue. We can have conversation, we can gain clarity, and we can find out what it is they're wanting and not wanting, what it is we're wanting and not wanting, and find out where the overlap is.
Yeah. And I think on one of my dating profiles, I actually write, I say that I identify as polyamorous, ask me about it. You know, and invite the dialogue, because, you know, someone may have a very different idea of what polyamorous is. Someone may say we're just in an open relationship. And some people may think polyamorous is only when everybody, like it might be, may think of polyamory as non-hierarchical rather than that there's different ways of doing polyamory. You don't have to be coupled to be polyamory. Anyways, there's lots of different things, but I think the important part is being clear on what it is that you want, and you know, and you can choose a label that you most identify if you want, but then sharing that with others when you interact with them and what it means with you. So that I think the idea is we want people to be able to consent to the relationship, right?
Consensually non-monogamous, yeah. But it's all about that dialogue, right? About having that open communication, talking about our own true feelings, what we're wanting and not wanting, and finding out from them, inviting them to share with us what it is that they're wanting.
Exactly.
Keep talking.
Keep talking.
Say everything.
Yeah, so that idea of labels and styles of non-monogamy is what we're talking about in Module 2 of this afternoon at 3 p.m. So those of us who are watching, we'll see you at 3 p.m. or in the recording. You can watch it where we go through what style non-monogamy is for me/us. Yeah, so that's it for today.
All right.
6 lessons-ish, 6 years polyamorous. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.